Sea surface temperatures are influenced by several factors. Obviously, climate, although the ocean itself heats up and cools down much slower than the air. Not fully warmed until August, our seas are at their coldest in March. Temperatures are also modified by the sea itself. Our main ocean current, the North Atlantic Drift, mixes freely with much colder currents sweeping down into the North Sea from Norway. What's more, particularly offshore, surface waters are constantly mixing with the depths below. Of course, on long summer days, the sun warms the beaches, taking the chill off the incoming tide. But just beyond the surf, even on the hottest day, our seas are still likely to be twice as cold as an indoor swimming pool.
It's all too easy to be deceived by conditions. A blue sky, a hot day, but cold water. Man is a warm-blooded animal who needs to keep himself at a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius to maintain efficient function. And if you take that system and dunk it in cold water at anything between 2 and 15 degrees Celsius, then you are facing a serious challenge. So people who go down to the sea in ships must remember it's dangerous out there and you've got to know what you're doing.
So what actually happens when someone suddenly finds themselves in cold water? A boat capsized, or even a helicopter ditching. Tests at the Institute of Naval Medicine tell their own story.
I'm glad I could sit down while we're doing this. Just checking the pacemaker, actually.
Is he ticking, Mike?
Yes, looking fine.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Right, we're going to dress you.
So I'm an admiral, am I?
You can call yourself what you like. You're still doing it there, sir.
Okay, Duncan, we want you to take a slightly larger than normal breath in, hold it for as long as you can under the water. Come to the surface by releasing the seatbelt and stay in the water until we tell you to get out. Good stuff. We've got some nice baseline data.
Okay?
Yeah, go.
Okay, down we go then, Duncan. Here we go then.
This water, by the way, is at 10 degrees Celsius. That's a typical temperature off our coastline on a sunny day in June. Even when protected by warm clothing, a person can only expect to hold their breath for about 10 seconds in water below 15 degrees Celsius. This initial cold shock response, an overwhelming need to gasp in air, is often followed by uncontrolled and rapid breathing. At this stage, the chances of breathing in water and drowning are highest, particularly with wave splash in choppy or rough seas. Adding to the problems, an extended period of rapid breathing flushes carbon dioxide out of the body. This can cause muscle cramps. Not surprisingly, the heart beats faster. At the same time, the outer blood vessels narrow to conserve body heat. Unfortunately, these responses combine to push blood pressure up. This increases the risk of heart failure and brain hemorrhage.
Looking very good indeed. Keep it up.
Luckily, cold shock usually lasts for only 2 or 3 minutes. As the body adjusts, the heartbeat and respiration slowly return to more normal levels. Clearly, the best chance of survival is not to swim until breathing has settled.
Well done, Duncan. Out you come. Well done.
Coping with the first few minutes, however, is no guarantee of continued survival over the first half hour. In cold water, even strong swimmers have difficulty coordinating swim stroke with breathing.
That's good. Keep it there. That's nice.
Once again, the temperature is just 10 degrees. Most people keep their head up to avoid the cold, leaving the body in an awkward vertical position. But much worse than that, the arms and legs actually become weaker and more rigid as they cool down. Over a period of time, no one can manage anything like their distance in warm water. As poor headway is made, panic can only make matters worse. Unfortunately, drowning is all too often the inevitable result.
Okay, Sharon, stop there. Stop there.
Go across to the side. Okay, Sharon, that's it. Well done.
Just rest there.
Not a bad effort for a swimmer in a test tank, but what's it really like to face the situation alone in the open sea?
It happened so quickly because all we were doing 1 second was flying, and the second later there were the 2 cracks and we were up to our necks in water. It was as quickly as that, and of course it flew straight in, so there wasn't any levelling off or anything, it just flew straight in. It was very cold coming up in it, very cold indeed, and it was very cold the first, I suppose, few minutes we were in it. I thought that if we were not very careful, Megan would die, because she had swallowed so much, and at that time it was very cold, and she was by then semi-conscious. And that was what I think I was afraid of, because I thought if one of our group dies, then it could have an awful effect. And you see, the children needed help. They'd lost their families. Now, after we'd been in the water about half an hour, Dominic said to me, "When do you think the rest of them will come up?" And I said, "I'm awfully sorry, Dominic, I don't think anybody else will come up." Mentally, of course, well, I don't think you ever forget. And I had nightmares each night in the hospital, and obviously I've had them since, but they're not as bad as they were.
Cold shock and drowning are not the only problems that have to be faced. Water is an excellent conductor of heat. Once immersed, a person loses warmth much faster than in air. In our cold waters, it's only a question of time before hypothermia sets in. Shivering becomes quite violent in an attempt to combat the severe cold. However, this activity will soon slow down and stop altogether as the body's core temperature continues to fall. As time slips by, profoundly cold victims become confused and lose the will to survive. Eventually, drifting into unconsciousness, they cannot stop themselves taking in water. Colder still, the pupils of the eyes dilate and the pulse may become too weak to feel. Breathing may barely continue, if at all. Death might not occur, however, until much later, so it's vital not to give up on hypothermic casualties until they've been thoroughly rewarmed. Only then, with still no sign of life, can all hope be lost.
Roger, survivor sighted, 100 yards off nose running. Roger, bringing next to the door. Checking his equipment. Running in now, just descending now. Roger, running in now, indication.
Rough handling can kill an immersion victim, particularly someone suffering from hypothermia. So it's important to get things right from the start. In the water, there's greater pressure on the legs than on the chest. This pressure, called hydrostatic squeeze, actually helps the body's weakened circulation, in particular the return of blood from the limbs to the heart.
Oh, we've had the sunset. Winching in.
A vertical rescue brings at least 2 potentially fatal factors into play. First of all, the victim suddenly loses the benefit of hydrostatic squeeze. Second, gravitational forces actually pull the blood down into the legs. When someone is suffering from hypothermia, their circulation may collapse, with fatal consequences.
Clear of the water. And you clear forward and down.
Because of this danger, called post-rescue collapse, vertical helicopter lifts are not the ideal choice for hypothermic victims, although necessary when speed is required.
By the door. Bringing the survivor inboard.
If they have to be used, rescue teams must be aware that the victim's condition may have deteriorated considerably during the lift. Casualties must be laid down immediately on board. Make sure the legs are kept slightly higher than the head to help circulation to the heart. Remember to take into account the likely tilt of the helicopter's nose during flight.
Coast Guard and Casualty.
This particular lift, using a double strop, is being used successfully by the Coast Guard at Leon Solent.
Positioning the second strap. Steady.
Although a little slower than a single strop technique, the hypothermic victim can be lifted in a reclining position. The stress on the heart is now minimized, while the lift itself is far more comfortable. By far the best method of recovery is to get the casualty into a horizontal position straight away. Inflatables are ideal. Once again, position the feet slightly higher than the chest. It's best to place the head to the stern of the boat, as the bow will inevitably rise when underway. If returning to a ship, the casualty should remain in the seaboat until it's been hoisted to deck level or inboard.
Give me the hand.
Don't allow anyone who's been in the water for some time to wander around or even sit up for at least 30 minutes after rescue, as they may still suffer a fatal collapse. Emotionally, there's often a delayed reaction to the events that have taken place.
The wind got up to sort of easterly, southeasterly, quite brisk, with quite a swell down off St Catherine's. They were wet, semi-hypothermic when they were picked up, and in shock.